All right, Chris Speaks back here tonight with Dr. Lucas Wilder, who uh, brag on him all the time, but he is by far the most premier historian in the Civil War that I've ever met. Not a topic he doesn't know, or general, or anything for that matter. I'm glad to have him back here tonight for another chat. I always enjoy these. Lucas, how are you, man?
Like I said, doing better than I should be.
Glad to hear that. So, we've talked a lot about Gettysburg. We've talked about Lee. We talked about Stewart. We did one about Longstreet. We did one about Ewell. But the man that is lost, I guess, to history for battle or whatever, AP Hill. And didn't General Lee make a comment about Hill was always there on time, or Hill was, you could always count on him or something?
Well, both General Lee and Stonewall Jackson called out for General Hill in their on their deathbed. They both, even though Jackson and AP Hill didn't care for one another, Jackson did respect him as a commander as far as leading in battle. Now, he had some problems with Hill otherwise, but in battle, you could always count on General Hill to do what needed to be done, at least in most situations. I just released a video just took yesterday about the Battle of North Anna, and AP Hill fails to push Warren's corps into the river, which he probably could have easily done. And General Lee gets upset with him and says, General Hill, why didn't you do what Jackson would have done? And that's the title of the video, What Jackson Would Have Done. And General Lee scolded Hill for not pushing his men harder to push Warren's corps into the North Anna River. But
Yeah,
uh,
go ahead.
other than that, General Hill was always very dependable, and he gets a horrible reputation for being sick on major occasions, and that's just simply not the case. He was sick on the battlefield many times, but it didn't stop him from doing what he needed to get done. There's only a few instances where he has to miss battle. One of them is right after the Spotsylvania court, right after the Wilderness during Spotsylvania Courthouse, although he does come back at the very tail end as to lead his corps. And then General Lee actually, at the very end, right before he gets killed in battle, makes him leave for I think it's almost about a week, but he's supposed to be gone for about 2 weeks, but he just couldn't stay away from the front lines and he came back early. But other than that, I mean, he actually at during the siege of Petersburg, General Hill was near the enemy, within vision of the enemy, and was in so much pain he had to lay down, but he was still on the front lines. So if that's not dedication, I don't know what is. And I hate that he gets that reputation of not being on the field when he should be, because he absolutely was. Only in certain instances was he off the field.
Why'd you explain that? Because that's what I've always heard, and perception that was General Hill was always absent. Briefly take us through this. Now. This is his first time commanding a corps, and Ewell's corps was in the lead, followed by Hill's and Longstreet. Is that correct?
That's
Or
correct. General Ewell was the first
okay,
one into Pennsylvania during the Gettysburg campaign, followed closely by Hill. Well, actually, Hill leaves last from Fredericksburg.
okay,
So that's where they start out, is outside of Fredericksburg. Hill is the last one to stay behind at Fredericksburg. Ewell's already gone. He goes into Pennsylvania. Longstreet goes into the Shenandoah Valley, and then Hill goes into the Shenandoah Valley, and that's where kind of Longstreet and him change positions, and Hill gets ahead of Longstreet at that point and goes up towards Gettysburg.
okay.
The
I'm sorry. I was just going to. Where's General Lee at? Is he floating back and forth, or uh, you said one time he liked to stay near Longstreet, but what does he do? Is he moving back and forth with his corps, or
General Lee is moving mostly with General Longstreet. He's
okay,
staying in camp with General Longstreet, and mostly it's because Longstreet is a very close military advisor to Lee. Uh, it's not that Lee has to stay near him to rein him in or anything. He stays with him because if a situation occurs, he trusts him the most. and he's one of his close, especially with Jackson gone, that's his closest confidant other than Stuart. And of course, Stuart is not with the army at that point, so he does stay with Longstreet, although he is moving back and forth. He spends most of his time with Longstreet in the near lead up to the Battle of Gettysburg.
Okay, so on the 30th, was it Early that went into Gettysburg?
Yes, Early had already been through. At least some of his troops have been through Gettysburg prior to the battle actually occurring when General Hill goes in.
Okay, so and the next day, General Heath, why does he go back to Gettysburg?
That's a big debate. Most people say that General Heath was looking for some shoes in Gettysburg. Um, that's I've heard many people say it's not the case, so I'm not going to litigate it here. The one of the biggest reasons that General Hill goes into Gettysburg is there's I go back and forth on this. Did General Lee have enough cavalry when he invaded Pennsylvania without Stuart? I do think I do think he did. I do think he did. It's a wonderful, wonderful English right there. I do. I think he did have enough cavalry where they used to the best of their abilities. No, and some of the cavalry that were supposed to join Lee didn't get to him until after the battle had already occurred. So he was having to rely on infantry to reconnoiter the ground. And so
Okay.
what General Hill does is sends a reconnaissance in force,
Mhm.
which he sends an entire division, which it's General Heath's division toward Gettysburg, and it's a reconnaissance in force. So they may have been looking for supplies, but one of the big things they're trying to do is see where the enemy's at. Make sure you can determine where the Union Army is, because at that moment Lee didn't know. And that's one reason he was so spread out, is because he didn't have his eyes and ears, General Stuart, with him. Again, he did have cavalry, but there wasn't as many, and they weren't used to the best of their abilities. Albert Jenkins was one of the cavalry commanders, and he was fairly new in his role, and so he couldn't perform the duties that General Stuart normally did. So
Okay, so where?
Um,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
General Hill is sick. Here's one moment he is sick. He's not with his lead elements. He's staying at the Cashtown Inn.
Right.
General Lee and General Longstreet will actually spend the night a little bit closer to prior to the battle. We'll spend the night a little bit um, within the vicinity around Chambersburg between and Cashtown. And so General Hill is sick, and he does stay in one of the rooms at the Cashtown Inn, which you can rent today. You can go and
Huh.
stay in the Cashtown Inn and go to the General Hill home. I go to the General Hill room, and I went up to Gettysburg last year and went into the Cashtown Inn. Was able to talk with one of a relative of the owner, and there was no one staying in the room. And so they allowed me to
Huh.
go up to the General Hill's room and just kind of check it out, see if I want to stay in there when I come back, which I definitely will. I want to stay in General Hill's room when I go back to Gettysburg sometime later this year. But being in the room he was in was very, very, um, a very special moment just to not be there where history took place.
Huh.
But he was sick. He was suffering from his prostatitis, which was a result of his gonorrhea that he had contracted many, many years before.
Okay, so where is General Pender and General Pettigrew's location on this
They're
morning?
they're close behind. They're around the Cashtown Inn, right along with um, moving towards Gettysburg. They're right behind one. General Heath is in advance. General Pender is right behind.
Okay, so General Heath, I mean, I don't know if he uh, disobeyed Lee's orders, avoid bringing on general engagement. I don't really know what that means, but anyway, he gets tangled up with what he thinks is militia and ends up being dismounted cavalry. Then I think the First Corps comes up and pushes him back. And is that correct so far?
Basically, yeah. The General Heath's advance goes in. A very small section of them goes in. They run into Buford's cavalry there. they're pretty much pushing them back, and then the First Corps comes up. They initially push Heath back, but he gains an advantage there on the field, at least in certain sections. But he is pushed back initially, and he comes back later. But the sounds of battle, that this is where we kind of get into that. If you watch the movie Gettysburg, you see General Lee ride up to General Hill right there in front of the Cashtown
Yeah,
Inn,
yeah, got
and
it read.
that's what's happening as General Heath is engaging. They're hearing the sounds of battle from the town of Gettysburg, and General Lee comes up to General Hill and is inquiring what's happening. Well, Hill doesn't know. He has been sick. He's not on the front, but Heath has been on a reconnaissance and force. He's supposed to find out what's ahead of them in the first place. And again, General Pender is close behind. So, I mean, he's essentially sending two divisions as and a reconnaissance and force, which militarily just is just something you don't really do that large. That's it's kind of odd, but because General Hill, it's kind of out of luck because General Hill sends so many troops on that. We'll call it a reconnaissance and force. He's able to gain an advantage on the field that the Union just don't have, and that's what leads to the general engagement that Lee didn't want that develops. However, when General Lee rides up to General Hill, it's like there's a battle going on down the road there. They ride together. And so for that first day, for the first day's battle,
General
where
Hill rides. So General Hill rides with General Lee.
yes, yeah,
Okay.
for that first day's battle, Lee and Hill are very close together. They actually watch the battle together. They're near an artillery battery. Um, you'll have to forgive me. I don't remember the exact location, but it's somewhere around Hare Ridge and moving towards the town. They're in that general vicinity as the battle's developing, and they're actually near an artillery battery. And it's a funny story. While Hill and Lee are sitting on horseback, there's some infantry that are kind of hunkered down in front of them, and an artillery shell goes off, and a piece of the fragment just pops a soldier in the head, doesn't kill him, doesn't even knock him out, just pops him in the head, and the man screams, "I'm killed, I'm killed," and he starts runs behind the lines, and one of the officers says, "Well, go and catch that dead man," you know,
um,
or carry off that dead man if you can catch him, something along those lines. So, but that happens right in front of Hill and Lee as they're watching the battle develop.
okay, so this might be a tough question, and I don't know if you can answer. Do you know if the scene in Gettysburg where Heath is reporting to Lee about what's taking place, if that's fictional, or did Heath actually come tell Lee what was taking place?
That's some minute details. Some other historian might know
Yeah,
the answer to
yeah.
that, not me. I have no doubt that that
Um,
I have no doubt that that happened. General Lee and General Heath did have a good relationship, and so General Heath would have easily been uh, forthcoming. And plus, if since since General Heath's division commander, or since since Heath's corps commander, General Hill, was right with Lee, then he would have had to report to Hill anyway. And with him being there, Hill being with Lee, Lee would have heard it and been able to respond. What a lot of people surmise is that this is General Hill's first time as a corps commander. It's also General Ewell's first time as a corps commander. However, General Ewell had a lot more, at least for the most part, had more experience than General Hill commanding larger troops. Now that I mean, it's a very fine line. General Ewell becomes basically a division commander with General Jackson in the Valley.
mhm.
Um, it's just a short time, but it's significant time, but it's relatively short as far as the war goes. Hill becomes a division commander right around right at the end of the Peninsula campaign during the so it's a very fine line who had the most experience. Technically, Ewell did. So I assume, of course, we'll never know the exact reason, but I assume that since General Ewell did technically have more experience, that General Lee felt he didn't need to be with General Ewell the entire time. So General Lee and General Hill will watch that first day's battle pretty much together, from what we understand.
All right, so we've talked a lot about command and control and how long it would take to get orders and stuff like this. So Pender and uh, Pettigrew's division, were did they have orders to ride to the sound of the guns, or did they have to send out a dispatch? Hey, converge on Gettysburg. I mean, what got them to start moving in that direction?
Um, you have to remember, Pettigrew was under General. Now, if I'm going to get I better not get this wrong. General Pettigrew was under General Heath. He will eventually take over for
Okay, my
General
bad. Yeah,
Heath
yeah. I'm
when
sorry.
he, yeah.
Yeah,
Hill's three division commanders was Dorsey Pender, Henry Heath, and Richard Anderson.
right. I'm sorry. I keep
Yeah.
I'm
No,
sorry.
no, it's hard to keep them straight all the time. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, because I just keep thinking about because when he got injured in Pettigrew commands on day three during the charge, I always get I always forget about that. So, so anyway, I'm sorry. So, are they under how do they know to convert, start moving in that direction?
How did what start moving that direction?
So, starting to converge on Gettysburg, was they already moving that direction? Did they like ride to the sound, have orders to ride to the sound of the guns, or did Lee or he'll have to send out dispatches? Hey, the engagement started at Gettysburg. When converge, I mean,
Uh, there's messages going out. However, we have to remember that Ewell makes it all the way to the Susquehanna River. And
right.
that's very far
Right.
deep into Pennsylvania at that
I
point.
think it's 40,
And
42 miles away, wasn't
yeah,
it? Yeah,
and
okay.
so he has turned back, and he is at Carlisle.
Mm-hmm.
And so dispatches, and Lee's going to try to concentrate his forces. They're having to, yes, they're sending out dispatches and for Ewell to come south.
Okay. Now, is Lee, how does it, General Hill's with him. Is he directing Hill on how to orders to give his officers, or how is Hill, or, or is Hill giving orders on? I mean, is Lee guiding him?
Well, honestly, we don't know. We don't know how much leverage he had within Hill's command. Although from experience, most of the time, General Lee lets his corps and corps commanders do as they see fit. So even though General Lee's on the field, again, we don't know the exact conversation these men are having. General Hill is always going to be, I can imagine with General Hill being so close to Lee physically that he would confirm that that's what we need to do. But General Lee was always pretty hands off with his corps commanders for the most part. And
Now, do you know what time of the day that Anderson and Pender's divisions got there?
and off the top of my head, I don't remember the exact timing, but it was later in the day once they got to pushing because
Okay.
because when Pender comes up, it's not very long. Pender moves forward and it's a beautiful attack.
So they're
And
heavily engaged at this point.
yeah, they're heavily engaged right there on McPherson's Ridge.
Mm-hmm.
And Pender's division, I don't think Pender gets enough credit. He maneuvered his men beautifully, but this may be even to his brigade commanders. Uh, Now his left gets when he moves forward, he's basically got his left resting on the Chambersburg pike, and as he moves forward, his left does get busted up by some artillery, some Union artillery. But when he pushes up to the seminary, his men perform beautifully as they attack. And then on the very far right, the South Carolinians will break through the Union left flank, and it's beautifully done. I mean, just a masterful. It's McGowan's brigade, or it was commanded by Abner Perrin at the time. McGowan had been wounded previously, so Abner Perrin and his South Carolinians just move a few regiments over and flank the Union left flank and pushes them through the town. That's when they break. and that kind of sets off a chain reaction. Although I don't think I would call it exactly a chain reaction. It was almost like the Union Army broke all at the same time, just because of the weight of the Union attack. Because as Pender's moving up towards the seminary, you have Robert Rhodes moving towards Oak Ridge, and then you've got the rest of we got General Early or General
Coming
Early's
down.
division coming down from the north, and so it's hit. They're hitting from all sides at that point, and General Hill's, like I said, I think it's more the brigade commanders. Although I'll give a lot of credit to Pender for being a good commander on that front. His brigade commanders really knew how to take charge, particularly the South Carolinians under Abner Perrin.
All right, so here's the $64,000 question, and I know it's probably nobody can answer this. General Lee wants to take that hill before nightfall. Why is he leaving it? Why is he not having Hill and Ewell support? Why is he not using all of his forces to take the hill?
Well, not all of them are up.
I mean, why is he not? My question is, why is he not ordering Hill's troops to support Ewell?
They were too, but they were too. Well, put it this way: Heath's division is too bloodied at that point
Okay.
to move any further. Pender has just won, but his I think it was Scales Brigade have been busted up on the Chambersburg Pike.
Okay.
They're moving through the town, but now they're disorganized, and we've talked about that a whole lot on this show. Is that once you attack, even if you're successful, the success of your attack will actually bust up your formations, and so now you're chasing people through town. So
Okay.
that's one reason Hill is not able to work in conjunction with Ewell, is because his are too busted up at that point. Ewell's in a much better position, at least as far as his troops are concerned, to maneuver towards the hills.
All right. So that was going to be my next question. I read that the Confederates suffered moderate casualties on that day, of which to 6 to 7,000 men. Did the majority of those casualties come from AP Hill's Corps?
A lot of them came from simply Heath's division. Yeah, I mean the quite a bit of them came from Heath's division, particularly in Pettigrew's brigade, because Pettigrew had essentially a brand new brigade. It hadn't seen combat, at least not into any large scale. Um, sorry, I'm trying to remember if that's um, when General Jackson gets killed, Lee is faced with a decision. He needs to break up. He needs to uh, form three corps out of two, and so he's taken and putting back and forth. And one thing he does is break up Hill's light division, and then add some new ones that hadn't seen combat before. And so one of them, if I'm not mistaken, was General Pettigrew's brigade, which was brand new before, hadn't really seen a lot of combat until the Battle of Gettysburg.
Okay, so we go into day two now. We don't get Longstreet's attack, and Ewell's supposed to go on Culp's Hill. What is Ewell's orders? I mean, are they held in reserve? Are they guarding road? I mean, are they? What's he doing during the day two?
Oh, that's a good question. What was General Hill doing on day two? Well, on the night of July 1st, so the end of the first day, it's Lee, Longstreet, and General Hill will be in conversation. General
Mm-hmm.
Ewell is not in the conversation. General Ewell is north of the town at his own headquarters, but Lee is talking with Hill and Longstreet about the next day's fight.
Mm-hmm.
And here's where there's some confusion apparently with General Hill and General Longstreet, because Longstreet is supposed to be making an attack with two of his divisions, General McLaws and General Hood, on the Union left flank. Hill is supposed to work in conjunction, or Hill is supposed to provide troops to Longstreet for the attack. Now, which one is correct? We don't exactly know. We do know what Hill believed, because Hill does not really take much action during the second day. His troops do move in. Anderson's division, part of them do attack. They help out General Barksdale on the very far left flank of Longstreet's attack, but it's not a very concerted effort. So, and it's not under Hill's orders either. that those attacks are made. So when those three men get done with their meeting, General Hill is under the impression that there is no that he really doesn't have much of a role on day two, and that's about it. That's what General Hill does on the second day at the Battle of Gettysburg. He's basically just hold your position at that point.
And I'm trying to remember, was Anderson wounded or was he killed on day two?
Uh, I don't think Anderson was wounded at all. Not
Okay,
Richard Anderson.
who? What? Okay,
Because,
I'm losing. I'm getting confused. Who did Pettigrew take command of on day three during the attack?
Pettigrew took the place of General Heath.
That's
Um,
right. Okay, okay. Sorry,
so
that's what I'm getting confused. I forgot about General Heath getting wounded. Okay, my bad.
no, you're
Yeah,
fine. General Anderson is uh,
yeah. I had a
he,
moment of
yeah,
lapse.
as far as I know, he doesn't get wounded, but he later becomes a temporary corps commander for Longstreet once the overland campaign starts and Longstreet gets wounded. So I know he didn't die. I was like, but I don't think he was wounded during the battle.
So now we go into day three.
Mhm.
Um, Lee takes. Why does he take? He's or what? What's Pettigrew now? Commanded it. They were already bloodied. Why is he taking those? Put those um two or putting him in there? Why is he not using Anderson or the others? Um, I mean Anderson's division is he's bloodied his teeth or I mean
Anderson had fought on the second day,
okay
and so Heath and of course Pender is
yeah
basically mortally wounded on the second day, and so Trimble becomes the division commander
mhm.
that takes over from Pender. So Trimble and Pettigrew's divisions of Hill's Corps have at least had a day of rest. They've been bloodied, and so Lee is I assume again we don't can't read his mind. I assume that he's trying to cycle the troops out. If you fought the
Right.
day before, you probably don't need to be attacking that day, the next day, if at all possible. Although not all of Anderson's troops really gave um, any major attack. Anderson, for example, Lang's Floridians did a little bit of an attack. Um, Ambrose Wright does a huge attack during that, but Mahone's basically stays the same. Wilcox's attack, so about half and half. So about half of Anderson's division attacks on the second day. So that would give you reason enough not to want them to go into battle the next day. Although Cadmus Wilcox will go into battle, he's supposed to guard the right flank of what becomes Pickett's charge. But besides that, Anderson's division doesn't do much. So that's another question that I don't know if anyone's sufficiently answered because the next day comes around and uh, some historians have described it as another miscommunication, um, somewhat. General Longstreet is given overall command of these troops, of General Heath and General Heath, of course, General Pettigrew's and General Pender's, which is now under General Trimble.
Yeah, that's
Longstreet's given command of those two divisions and one of his own to make this attack. What's left with General Anderson? Technically, Hill still commands him. He's not been placed under General Longstreet's command at that for the attack that becomes known as Pickett's charge. So that basically leaves Hill without any command to do anything, and he's simply holding tight. Um, that's
so,
that's the odd thing with General Hill is that the first day he commands in the field, the second and third days he's basically a support and role, even if you can consider that.
so do you know why or just know why does that not totally violate military protocol to take two divisions from one commander and place them under another commander?
It's odd, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. We see that at various points. Um,
Not a slight to the commander. taking your divisions and give to him because and I don't know if this actually happened or not, but in the movie, Longstreet says, "Shouldn't General Hill lead the attack?"
Well, that's what General Longstreet says he said.
Oh,
Shouldn't
okay,
General Hill lead the attack? Yeah.
okay.
Um, yeah, I think I was on a tour up at Gettysburg. The chief of interpretation there at Gettysburg National Military Park gave me a tour. We gave a lot of people a tour, but I was on the tour the of Pickett's charge, and I think he said that Longstreet had five separate accounts of what happened at Gettysburg, and all five are a slightly different. Some more different than the others, but some they're at least slightly different. But yes, General Longstreet says he said, shouldn't General Hill lead the attack or something to that effect, which is, I mean, you'd think the majority, if the majority of the troops are under one general, that he should be the one to do it. But you've also got to factor in it's proximity and it's also trust in the general. So it could be seen as a slight to General Hill. But I'm animating the Atlanta campaign right now, which should come out sometime in August. And General and divisions are moved around willy-nilly by Sherman on the Atlanta campaign. It's not out of the realm of possibility that, hey, you're going to switch this division to here out of convenience, or maybe a general needs a little bit more extra troops, so you're just going to move them over to one location. So it's completely in the realm of possibility and not always seen as a slight to the other general to be able to do that. And since Longstreet had seniority over Hill, I can see why, if there's a specified attack, it's different if the troops are moving into battle like on the first day. You need their corps commander to be over top of them. But once you've become stationary and you're simply moving troops around, there's a less need for that corps commander to operate with the troops.
Okay. I guess probably last from here. The Confederates move out on what, the fourth or fifth or what? Anyway, they put up a pretty tenacious rear guard action. Is General Hill involved in commanding any of this, to your knowledge?
Yeah, during the retreat, Hill is one. They actually switch out at one point, but Hill is part of the rear guard at one point during the retreat, and so it's again, General Lee trusts Hill, but this was his first battle, and we can speculate, and I think that's what we're doing quite a bit here on this show. But General Hill is absolutely a fantastic commander, and I think he shows it quite a bit in his tenacious stand because he's with General Pettigrew when he gets seriously wounded, and well, mortally wounded there on the retreat from Gettysburg. General Hill is right there. It could have easily been Hill that got mortally wounded as opposed to General Pettigrew.
General Hill was that close when Pettigrew was wounded.
Yeah, they were.
So,
I mean, right next to one another essentially.
because the accounts that I've read, Pettigrew was put up. I mean, his men were putting up a tenacious fight during that retreat. I mean, it's a hard fight. One question: why did General Hill wear that red shirt?
General Hill was never a he was never a stickler for the uniform.
Mm-hmm.
He absolutely was not. When he was in Mexico, he wore a sombrero and basically had like a Mexican outfit on as well, like a civilian Mexican outfit, not even a military outfit, with pistols all over him. I mean, he looked like an outlaw that we would think from like a Western. Maybe think of Josie Wales, or think of the Clint Eastwood type character. He essentially looked like that from all descriptions that we have of General Hill. So
So,
he wore the red shirt, which he called his battle shirt, or people called his battle shirt. He also, especially around Harper's Ferry, Virginia, his first assignment during the Civil War, he wore what they called a calico shirt rather than wearing the jacket. And another reason, at least what's put forward is that he wore the red so that his men could see him on the battlefield, so they knew that their officer was with them. And that's a very important thing to military standards during the American Civil War, is that you wear your you need to be up front with your troops, or at least within vision of them. And General Hill wore those clothes to stand out. Although we do have images of him in uniform, he was never a stickler for his uniform.
So, do we even have enough to even give General Hill a grade for his performance at Gettysburg, or or no? It sounds like he just didn't really have any command decisions to make.
Yeah, I don't think we can give Hill a solid grade. The first day, yeah. I had a lot of people criticizing. I've heard a lot of people criticizing Hill for launching that reconnaissance in force. Basically at least one division, but essentially two with Pender close behind. So that's seen as kind of odd that you would do that, especially if you're not trying to bring on a general engagement. Why would you have so many troops on the field? However, that does allow them to gain the advantage and win the first day. So you can factor in that, but besides that first day, there's no grade to give after the first day because Hill's essentially out of the fight.
Um, I know we talked about the shoes. Do you think he could have gave them the order to go there because of Harrison's report of cavalry?
Yeah, that as I kind of explained at the beginning, that's kind of what why Hill sent so many troops, is because there was such a lack of cavalry that he had to. If cavalry is easy, you can fill out the enemy, and if something emerges and you have to get out of there, cavalry can quickly move. But the infantry can't move quickly, so if you send in troops, you risk losing. If you send in too few, you risk losing a lot of troops.
Right.
And so you could lose an entire command if they're overrun. So sending in a larger command is understandable, at least for the way I see it. If you're having to do a reconnaissance, do it in force with infantry, because you never know what situation you're going to arise in. You need to be able to overwhelm an enemy if you do encounter it.
All right. So, is there anything that you think people should know about General Hill at Gettysburg?
Yeah,
Not.
I mentioned it and then I kind of trailed off. I don't know why. Because I can easily do that. There's too many things running through the head.
I know. Yeah.
But for the third day, I said there was miscommunication on the third day, and when Hill is his two divisions are given to General Longstreet, there is a miscommunication as far as we can tell, because Longstreet assumed that Hill would have some degree of control over his men during the attack.
Okay.
And Longstreet doesn't, from what I understand, is that Longstreet didn't order in the other two divisions. General Longstreet assumed that General Hill would have some element of control over them and send them in. Um,
Wow.
so, um, how or why Pettigrew and Trimble moved when they did, I'm not entirely sure about. I'd like to hear someone that's more of an expert on just the battle itself and the inner workings to be able to tell us why those 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 two divisions moved if no one exactly held control over them. But that's what I meant by miscommunication, and that I would really like to know how those two divisions moved if no one actually exerted any kind of command over them.
One last question. Do you know where General Hill observed the attack on day three at?
I don't know. It
Like
would have been.
where-
I'm trying to remember.
like the movie portrays, and maybe accurate, that Lee wasn't by Lee and Longstreet was not together, and so I just and
I'm trying to remember. It seems like I have read where they were to get where Hill was, but now I'm blanking. It may be in Arthur Fremantle, the British with the British observer. Although I had someone on my YouTube comments say he technically wasn't an observer, he was because he wasn't officially there on British on the for the British side. But either way, Arthur Fremantle he climbs a tree to watch the battle, and then goes up to General Longstreet. And it seemed like I remember him saying something about where Hill was, but I'd have to go back and read his book again. But General Hill, from his position, from where his troops were located, and a corps commander is always going to be pretty close to his troops. He would be, I would assume that he would be somewhere between the town and, if you're on the battlefield today, somewhere between where the town ends and where the North Carolina Monument is, somewhere in that little space along Seminary Ridge to watch it.
We know that, of course, General Holt, didn't survive the war. Is there any record or any correspondence or anything where he let, tell what he thought about the day three attack, or because surely he was angry, or I would think so, ordering his men into that attack like that. I guess that's just speculation.
Yeah, I don't recall any of Hill making any comment unless it's in one of his um, unless it's in one of his letters. Um, I don't know of him ever speaking about what happened.
All right, man. You stop the recording, start the other one.
Yeah, that's fine.
Let's see. Stop recording. All right, stop.